Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about a better business model for tabletop role-playing games. AAA freemium tabletop role-playing games. All right. So what I want to talk today about is innovation, specifically in the marketing and sales of tabletop role-playing games, and really specifically the sales. Even more than it would be a fundamental change in how tabletop role-playing games are built, how they're marketed, and how they're sold, okay? So this is really kind of the business end of the tabletop role-playing game. All right, so I love tabletop role-playing games. They're so special to me. But one of the things I've realized, there's this harsh reality. I realized this very, very recently. There are exactly 0 tabletop role-playing game design millionaires. Absolutely none, right? The tabletop role-playing game industry, ICV2 in 2017 estimated that the entire industry, of sales is like $35 million, right? That's the price of one yacht, right? It's super tiny. It is incredibly small. And not only is it small, it's just super, super small. Even if you double it, right, and say it's 70 or even $100 million now, it's a ridiculously small chunk of change. And the reason why is tabletop role-playing games, as they stand today, are an absolutely abominable business model, right? And the reason why is you write a book, right, and you sell that book to people, and that book is going to give them everything they need to create adventures and create stories for literally a decade. They can do 1,000 hours of play easily out of one core rule book, right? And there's almost nothing that brings those people back to buy additional material, okay? And the reality is, now here's the thing. The great thing about tabletop role-playing games is it is an absolute filter for creative, adaptive, intelligent people, okay? Really, the reality is, people who play tabletop role-playing games are already rich or they're going to be rich. It's one or the other. And the reason why is, basically, if you think it's fun to read 300 pages of rules and build your own world, you are an intellectual rock star, and you are going to remain an intellectual rock star. Like, the reality is, if you're, less intellectually savvy and, you're going to, and don't want to be challenged by reading and the social obstacles that tabletop role-playing games, you end up playing video games. You end up watching more television, right? But the reality is, tabletop role-playing games demand literacy. They demand social adaptation, right? And today, in today's world, that is the absolute, potion components for an intellectual rock star. And that's all that plays tabletop role-playing games. It's people who are intellectual rock stars or will be. And in today's knowledge worker world, that's rich people, period, right? So tabletop role-playing games are a filter for rich people, right? So here's the issue. We're stuck right now. We're stuck with this horrible business model. I create this old, paper book. I sell it for $50, $60, $70. What's it matter? It guarantees 1,000 hours of play. It doesn't draw anyone back to buy anything new, right? Adventures are writing adventures to sell adventures is one of the most ridiculous aspects of tabletop role-playing games. The best game masters do not use pre-generated adventures. There's absolutely no need for them. It is just selling, it's selling clouds to angels. It's just not useful, okay? All right. So what do we do about this, right? So what do we do? Well, I got the answer. Here you go. All right. It is the video game market has answered this problem. They've already figured this out. All right. I have a junior high age son. Love him to death. Great kid. Right? He is the target of many, right, AAA freemium games. Now, I'll give you 3 of them. Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Dauntless. My son plays all of these. They're all fantastic. They all look amazing. I don't think a single one of those games has less than $100 to $250 million of development in them already. They are $250 million games each. The development on them was absolutely incredibly expensive, right? So these companies that are building this, and these are not small companies, right? You know, like Epic makes Fortnite. These are companies that deal with hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of commerce every year. These are massive companies, right? And they are giving their product away for free, right? And that is a new premium model, right? Now, in tabletop role-playing games, we can follow this road, right? However, it's a different path than you would expect, okay? It's not as easy for tabletop role-playing games to do this as it is for video games to do this, right? So how do video games do this? Well, the reality is I know the answer to that, right? My son plays Fortnite, and we had to put he immediately was like, hey, I need this skin in Fortnite. I want my character to look a different way. Can I buy this skin? And we were getting this request, pretty frequently. Can I buy? Right? So he wanted to spend money in these freemium games, right? There you go. There's your business model, right? So the way we handled this at the house is we said, listen, you could spend your own money on this, but your own money is capped at $20 a month, right? So you can spend your money on anything you want. Your video game expenditures for intangible goods is, for buying items in-game, for in-game purchases, is $20 a month. That's worked out great. Everybody's happy. My son's happy. We're happy. Worked out fine, okay? So here's the kicker, right? How do we get there? And all three of those games that I just talked about, Apex Legends, Fortnite, Dauntless, these are all highly successful games. They are doing great. These are sound business models. Unlike our tabletop role-playing game business models, which has failed to generate there is not one single active tabletop role-playing game designer that is a millionaire today based on their work of creating tabletop role-playing games. It cannot be done, right? Right. Now, I am aware there's a few Kickstarters and stuff, but even there, those people aren't pocketing millions, right? Almost all that money's going right back into the projects, right? I don't think Matt Colville's a millionaire. I really don't. I don't even think it is arguable that Matthew Mercer is a millionaire, but I don't think that came from Critical Role. I think that's coming from him being a voice actor, right? He's a Hollywood celebrity. It's not unusual for Hollywood celebrities to be millionaires, right? And if you don't think Matt Mercer is a Hollywood celebrity, you're not paying attention. He is definitely, he has really built a major name for himself, even beyond tabletop role-playing games. All right, so what's the model here, right? So these games, they sell skins, they sell equipment, they sell exclusiveness, they sell time. You want to get this thing done in the game, but it's going to take less time, right? So the reality is we can't do this in tabletop role-playing games, right? The reality is you're going to put all your equipment into the core rule book. The equipment's there. You can't piecemeal it. You can't say, oh, you got to you got to pay us $10 and we'll include a sword in your book, right? It doesn't work that way, right? So what is the actual value, right? In that, what can we get money for in tabletop role-playing games? A lot of people aren't going to like this, but I'm going to tell you where the money is at. The money is the user data, okay? The smartest people in the world are playing tabletop role-playing games. The movers, shakers in the world are playing tabletop role-playing games, right? These people are setting up new cloud platforms. These people are setting up NGOs. These people are, writing the greatest screenplays in Hollywood, right? They are news reporters. They are doctors. They are, veterinarians. Some of them are millionaires now, right? There are absolutely millionaire veterinarians, right? And the reality is, they have incredible control over. They have not control. They have incredible influence over our society, right? So what we need to do is specifically the list of who is playing these games is incredibly valuable, right? So you could set up a freemium model. So the first thing you want to do is core rule books. No more adventures, no more source books. You can do adventures and you could do source books. You got to give that away for free as well, right? And I would not make it a model of, hey, so here's the thing. The way you get these freemium games is you simply sign up with your real name, right? And the more information that you give these companies, the more of the game you get, right? So you can get the core rulebook for just your name and your address, right? If you want to give us your cell phone number, that you're in for everything. Everything we ever release, you're going to get, right? That is incredibly valuable. And then the other addition is so basically what you're going to do is you build a company that releases a new core tabletop role-playing game every 4 months, right? Now, we know this be done because of Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering releases a new set every 4 months, right? You can release a new core rulebook every 4 months. You can absolutely do this. You need a good artist, a good layout. You need good artists, good layout, and good writers, right? And frankly, people are lining up to do this work for dirt pay, right? And the reason why, it's a rock star job. Everybody wants to do it, right? Everybody wants, everybody wants that. Like, you can pay virtually nothing. Like, you could absolutely get away with minimum wage, right? Paying for all three of those. And the reality is, the reason why is this job is so baller and so many people want to do it, they will do it at rock bottom prices, right? And so one, you're gonna pay to get the games done, and they need to be the same thing as what the video games. It needs to be AAA. It needs to be top-notch art, top-notch writing, and top-notch layout, right? And you can do this with a team of like 10 people. You can pay them virtually minimum wage, right? And then how are you as the company going to recoup that, right? Well, the reality is you're going to sell the data that you get from people who sign up to get the game for free. You're going to sell their name, their address, their cell phone number, and you're going to attach goodwill, right? So, like, the other thing is and a lot of people don't like to hear that, right? And I understand that. I understand your objections. I'm past this, right? I love advertising. Advertise that out of me. If you're giving me a free product, I don't care if you have my name, right? I don't care if you have my address. I don't care if you have my cell phone number, right? As long as you're giving me a good return for it, right? And most people are already making that trade. The vast majority of people, they already have that data already on Facebook. So they're not giving away something that's not already needed, right? It's just a signal that's being sent, right? So I think this is a much, and I think there would be a ton of companies that would pay very, very much for these lists of players. And the reason why is these lists of players, they are hot leads. These lists of players are incredibly hot leads, right? And the reality, and the reason why I know this can be a success is podcasts. Podcasts is an absolutely terrible medium. It shouldn't even exist. But smart people figured out that only smart people listen to podcasts. And everybody listening to podcasts, that is a super burned down filter of I've got money, right? And so that's why people continue to pay crazy dollars for podcast advertisement. And so that's my point, is we should go to this AAA freemium model where the user data gets sold for money, right? And then additionally use the game to build goodwill for specific companies, right? For instance, I can understand people are like, how are you going to do that? Most of these are fantasy games. Those are your science fiction games, right? Absolutely. Here's how you do it, right? You can't put Doritos right into your tabletop role-playing game, right? But you can put what's that word where they mix up the letters, right? Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. It's not an acronym, but like when you take the letters and you mix them up and you make different words out of those letters, right? So that would be one thing, is you could put product names mixed up into the tabletop role-playing game. Additionally, when you have factions, right? The good guys, you can put them in the colors of the company that is paying you to make the game, right? The bad guys, you can very subtly put their competitors' colors onto the bad guys, right? There's a million, and actually, those are just two ideas right off the top of my head. And this would be something that you would build and you would carefully scale, right? And you would get better at this. You would be better at putting modern companies, elements that they want and ideas that they want into tabletop role-playing games. And the reality is, I think a lot of people are like, oh, nobody would want this. It's already a proven model. This is already a proven model in tabletop, in video games, right? We can absolutely bring this to tabletop role-playing games. So then I also hear you. There's probably one more question. Well, if it's such a great idea, Scott, why don't you go ahead and do it, right? I would love to. Unfortunately, I'm incredibly blessed with an extremely well-paying job and 4 children and a beautiful wife, right? I would love to go down this road, and I think this really would be very viable, but unfortunately, I've worked very hard in information technology and built an incredibly successful career, right? Which it would be almost impossible to replace that, that revenue with building up this, roll of the dice startup. But I'm really hoping that out there's some P.T. Barnum like, real go-getters who will really take this idea and run with it, right? And honestly, the reality is that P.T. Barnum, I'm not using that, I know what I'm talking about there, right? Like, you need somebody who's really gonna, kind of really take some risks, right? But the reality is, I think here's my issue, right? I think it's shameful that if you become a tabletop role-playing game designer right now, there's about a 0.0.0.1% you will ever become a millionaire doing that work. And if you become a video game designer, there's a pretty good chance you're going to become a millionaire, right? If you dedicate yourself to that and you execute well, right? But if you dedicate yourself and you execute well on tabletop role-playing games, the current modern business model for this is so antiquated and bad, there's almost no way you can make money out of this. I really want to see our industry grow. I think this is a path forward. That's my opinion. What's your opinion? Do you think I'm wrong or right? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.